of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available, as always, at MMAOddsmaker.com and our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Got a pretty good show lined up today. Bunch of pieces of news here to talk about, as well as a couple of fight announcements. So let's get right into it. One of the things I want to talk about, I want to start with it. Colby Covington. There were some rumblings yesterday. Makwan made a tweet saying that Colby's management is responsible for him not getting a title shot, which I thought was interesting because Dan Lambert is one of the best managers in business. American Top Team guys get title shots all the time. They have big fights all the time. And in the replies, Michael Chiesa, the UFC welterweight, said that Colby Covington actually switched management groups recently to Ballingy, they have a couple really big fighters right now, like Tony Ferguson. I think they have Curtis Blades as well, a couple other guys. Which I thought was interesting because we all assumed that Colby was still with Dan Lambert and with American Top Team, right? So as soon as I saw that, I messaged James Lynch, my good friend, and of course someone who's very closely connected to Dan Lambert. And I said, James, have you heard about this? He said he didn't know, but he would message Dan Lambert. I also asked Cole Shelton, the guy, my good buddy, and another guy that's very close to Dan Lambert. I asked him, can you talk to Dan? He messaged Dan. Dan said that he's still with Colby, but there's some sort of co-management thing going on. And then James later on that day, last night, interviewed Dan Lambert, and they kind of got to the bottom of this. So basically, Colby Covington's changed management. He's still working with Dan Lambert, but he's also working with Ballingy. And basically, Dan Lambert said that Ballingy offers Colby some stuff that American Top Team and Dan Lambert can't, like sponsorships on the side and stuff like that. So he thought it was a good move for Colby. But I thought it was really interesting that there was this change of management and that we didn't really hear about it either. It was kind of something that went very under the radar. So he still is working with Dan Lambert, but he's also working with Ballingy now, and that seems like kind of the next step in his career. So obviously the question is, will Colby Covington stay with American Top Team? According to Dan Lambert, that's the plan. He says he will stay to ATT. He said he's going to talk to him. He's going to talk to Masvidal. He's going to talk to Poirier when he gets back and try to sort it out. Basically, according to Dan Lambert, they have so many fighters there. These kind of things will happen between fighters, especially in a big camp like ATT. So he's not too worried about it. But to me, it's like some of the stuff Colby said, and again, I'm a fan of Colby Covington. I think he's a great fighter. I actually like his shtick. I think it's funny, but some of the stuff he said about his teammates is just like really not cool. So I personally don't see how this is going to work out. I think he's going to end up leaving at some point. But according to Dan Lambert, they're going to try mending the fences. So right now, Colby Covington is still part of American Top Team. Right now, Jorge Masvidal and Dustin Poirier are part of American Top Team. But for how long, who knows? We'll see what happens. But definitely something very interesting is that Colby Covington has new management. So that's definitely something that's worth talking about. Speaking about Masvidal, he spoke about Nate Diaz yesterday, and he had nothing but praise to say about Nate Diaz. He loves the matchup, like we all do. But the one thing I thought was interesting was he's like, Nate Diaz has never been accused of steroids. The guy shows up to fight, and he's a fan of him. So I think this fight's just going to be amazing. We're not going to see the trash talk, I think, that we all expect from Masvidal and Diaz. They always trash talk their opponents. But I think for this fight, they're just going to throw it down, man. This is just going to be a sick fight for the fans. Two guys that are fighting for that BMF title. It's going to be a great fight. And I you know what? It's one of those fights. I don't think we need the trash talk. We just need to see these two step in the cage and just go at each other. So I'm cool with there not being too much trash talk. We don't need it. Just going to be a great fight. David Branch is in the news. David Branch was suspended yesterday by USADA for 2 years for testing positive for banned substances. David Branch has since been released by the UFC, according to Mike Russell, a good friend of mine as well. Mike Russell says that, first off, David Branch, according to Mike Russell, has left Dominance MMA, so he is no longer an Ali Abdelaziz client, and he has left the UFC because apparently they've cut him. According to Mike Russell, the UFC did not make that announcement, but Mike Russell said that he has heard that he's been released, and it makes sense. I mean, first off, he's 37 years old. He won't be fighting until he's 39. Why would you keep him on the roster? This guy was a solid fighter in WSOF. He won 2 titles there, light heavyweight and middleweight. But now you got to wonder, like, was he on the juice back then too, right? The guy was kind of a gatekeeper in the beginning of his career. He turned into an incredible fighter in WSOF. 2-division champ, light heavyweight and middleweight champ. He looked great. But since coming back to the UFC, just 2-3. He beat Christoph Jocko. He beat Thiago Santos, which was obviously a massive win. But he lost to Luke Rockhold, lost to Jared Cannonier, lost to Jack Hermanson, lost 3 of his last 4 by stoppage. 37 years old. I don't see his career lasting much longer. He probably will come back and fight at some point. Don't know what for what promotion, maybe PFL when he does return, if that even exists at that point, maybe Bellator. But yeah, this guy, you got to wonder about his past accomplishments, given that his age and also the fact that he kind of turned from a gatekeeper journeyman type into a legitimate champion in the WSOF. So disappointing news for David Branch and for his fans with the 2-year suspension. But hey, you got caught cheating, man, and you saw it come. So 2-year suspension. David Branch will be returning in July 26, 2021. So he'll be out for a long time. Nick Newell has re-signed with Bellator, so that's a good sign by them. Obviously, Nick Newell coming off a great win there in his debut in Bellator over Julie Browning. Man, he looked good. Sorry, Corey Browning, not Julie Browning. That's the guy from the Ultimate Fighter. Corey Browning, the guy who beat Kimbo Slice Jr. So he's coming off a great win there. He's actually won 5 of his last 6 fights. He has 2 losses in his career, one to Justin Gaethje. We could all forgive him for that one. That's just a bad matchup. And then Alex Munoz in the Contender Series. In a fight the UFC didn't want him to win, they gave him a wrestler that was going to hold him on the ground. That's basically what happened. But he looked really good against Browning. And for Bellator, they go to Connecticut all the time. He's from Connecticut. It makes so much sense that this marriage. So great sign by Bellator. They've did a multi-fight deal here, and I'm looking forward to seeing who they match him up with next. But yeah, great sign for Bellator. Nick Newell's inspiration, but not only that, he's just a great fighter, man. He really is a good fighter, and this is a really solid sign for Bellator, in my opinion. Lavar Johnson, former UFC heavyweight, he's been in prison for the last couple of years because he beat up his girlfriend. The guy's a total scumbag, and he's going to be fighting for Ken Shamrock's Valor Bare Knuckle fighting. So he'll be fighting James McSweeney, actually, I think, this weekend. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, listen, there are a lot of bad people in the sport, for sure. So he's not the first guy who's a criminal who's going to be fighting in MMA or in bare knuckle. It's not really MMA, but obviously it's worth talking about since Ken Shamrock's running it. But yeah, I mean, this guy is just a bad person, and he's been in jail for beating the hell out of his girlfriend. He's been in jail a few times in his life too. He's had some ups and downs in his life and also in his career. But the guy's lost 5 of his last 6 fights. He has not fought an MMA fight since 2014. He's been in prison the last few years. I don't know why Valor Bare Knuckle signed him. Why would you sign this guy, honestly? Like, there's so many heavyweights. There's so many fighters out there that want their shot, and you're going to sign this guy? This guy should not be anywhere near MMA right now. He shouldn't be given that privilege of fighting in MMA, in my opinion. So, it just, yeah. Again, he's not the only guy who has a criminal background who competes in MMA or in bare knuckle or in boxing or whatever. Combat sports obviously draws a lot of, not nice people to it, but in this specific case, I mean, I remember when the news came out, what he did to his girlfriend. Like, here, I'm just reading it right now. He punched, kneed, and slammed his girlfriend, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So this guy's been in jail since 2016, and he had time served before that. So, yeah, I mean, it's just terrible, man. Just not a nice guy. And I don't even care if he hears this. It's just not a nice guy, man. And not a great fighter either. I mean, he did have a couple of good knockouts in the UFC back in 2012, beat Joey Beltran and Pat Barry, but for the most part, he's just not a great fighter. Lost 5 of his last 6. Has knockout power, obviously, but most heavyweights do. Doesn't have a great chin. Doesn't have a good submission game. Maybe the fight with James McSweeney is going to be exciting, but to me, it's not even worth bringing a guy like that into your promotion, and especially Valor Bare Knuckle, where it's like a new promotion. Is this really the kind of guy you want on your card? Very strange. Anyways, let's talk about a couple of fight announcements here. UFC 244 gets a really good fight between Shane Burgos and Makwan Amirkhani. I like this fight a lot. Shane Burgos, man, he's good. He is really good. One of the best prospects at 145. 12-1 record. Won 5 of his last 6 fights. He's coming off 2 straight wins over Kurt Hallbaugh and Cub Swanson. The Cub Swanson win, of course, the biggest win in his career. But, man, he's looked good in the UFC. Takes some Amirkhani here. Mr. Finland. Amirkhani, 15-3 record. He's also looked really good in the UFC, 5-1 record, excuse me. So really good record in the UFC. The one loss to Arnold Allen, and Arnold Allen's killing it right now. So not a bad loss. 2 straight wins here for Amirkhani over Chris Fishgold and Jason Knight. Definitely a competitive fight. I'd lean towards Burgos, though. I just feel like he's the more well-rounded guy and much better at striking. So I got to lean towards Burgos, but Amirkhani's grounding very legit. So don't sleep on Amirkhani, but you got to favor Shane Burgos here. And UFC Copenhagen gets another fight that's coming up next weekend. Brandon Davis will be getting another shot in the UFC, and he takes on Giga Chikadze. So that's kind of an interesting matchup. Brandon Davis, 10-7 record, so not a great record, and his record in the UFC is 2-4, coming off a split decision loss to Kyung Ho Kang. Very close fight, but he did lose. And overall, he's just 1-1 since moving down bantamweight. Beat Randy Costa and then lost to Kyung Ho Kang. Getting a short notice fight here, just over a month later after the Kang fight. So that's interesting. And again, he's taking on Giga Chikadze, who was on the Contender Series. We'll pull him up here. some people were surprised that he was signed. He's a glory kickboxer, so he does have that background. 7-2 record in MMA, 31 years old, Georgian fighter. He's coming off 2 straight wins, but he did lose in the Contender Series to Austin Springer just last year. Since then, he has won 2 straight fights, so by stoppage, so that's interesting, by first-round stoppage. At the same time, though, I mean, I don't think Springer's fought in the UFC, so it's kind of strange, right, that this guy's getting a shot, whereas Springer, he actually hasn't fought since last August himself. So I don't know what happened with Springer, if he just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore because he didn't get signed to the UFC. But yeah, it's a little strange. You see a guy that lost on Contender Series get signed and the guy who won not get signed. But either way, he probably has a good chance to beat Brandon Davis here. Brandon Davis just not a great fighter. He's an okay fighter. He's a gatekeeper type at 135 now. Close fight for sure. It can go either way, but I don't know. I really have no idea who's going to win this fight. Maybe Chikadze if the fight stays standing, but we'll see what happens there. And I got to mention a couple of Bellator fights. Bellator 231. A couple interesting matchups have been added there. I mean, I say interesting with quotation marks here. Jack Swagger, Jake Hager, he will be fighting here, and he'll be taking on, what's this guy's name? His name is Anthony Garrett. So I don't know anything about this guy. This is the Frank Mir and Roy Nelson 2 card. So Jake Hager, 2-0. He has looked good. He's 37 years old. So he's an older guy, but man, he's in good shape. Obviously, his wrestling is tremendous. He's looked really good in MMA, 2-0. But look who he's beaten: J.W. Kaiser and T.J. Jones. Like, these guys are literally 2 of the worst guys probably in the heavyweight division in North America. And he beat them both by first-round submission, which, you know, he's got that good arm triangle choke. That's cool. But again, these guys are not good fighters. And he takes on Anthony Garrett here. Garrett's 4-2 record, 29 years old, so a little bit younger than Jake Hager, obviously, but coming off a knockout loss in Shamrock FC. He's actually fought almost his whole career in Shamrock FC. It seems like they have a little bit of a thing going on there. But the one thing I will point out here, he has fought J.W. Kaiser. He knocked him out in 2016. J.W. Kaiser got absolutely destroyed by Jake Hager. So do MMA math, maybe this guy's a better chance, but I doubt it, man. I think this guy's going to be submitted in the first round. Like, I just don't. I don't know why Bellator can't give Jake Hager like a legitimate heavyweight at this point. Like, he's looked pretty good against low-level guys. What is beating a guy like Anthony Garrett, who no one ever heard of, really proved? I don't think it proves much. The guy's 37, Jake Hager. He's not 27. He's 37. So it's time to get him going and to get a step up in competition. Also on that card, Bec Rawlings will be making her Bellator debut against Ilara Joanne. Bec Rawlings, she's been in bare knuckle lately. Coming off a win there. She had 4 straight losses to end her UFC career. So that was unfortunate. But Bec Rawlings is an exciting fighter. She had a couple wins at the UFC. She wasn't totally out of her element in the UFC. I think in Bellator, it's probably a good fit for her. Takes on Joanne, 8-4 record. She's only 25 years old. She's pretty young, coming off 2 straight wins. I don't know too much about her. I'm just looking at her resume right now. The one notable fighter she's fought is Viviane Pereira. Her debut, she got knocked out by her. Viviane Pereira, former UFC fighter in Invicta now. That's about it. She hasn't fought anyone else who's notable. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, it's a step up against Bec Rawlings, but at least Joanne does train with the Pitbull brothers. That's a good gym. But Bec Rawlings has a lot of experience. Her striking is actually pretty good. She's only 30 years old still. So you got to lean towards Bec Rawlings here. And again, that's at Bellator 231. That's the Roy Nelson, Frank Mir 2 card. Also on that card, Ed Ruth takes on Jason Jackson. I actually like that fight. That's a good fight. Jason Jackson's a pretty good prospect here, coming off 3 straight wins, including one in the LFA. Guy's got some good wins in his career. And then obviously Ed Ruth has been someone who we've talked about for a long time, MMA fans and media. He had that nice win over Kunamono in his last fight. He did lose to Neiman Gracie in the tournament, but the guy's good, man. He's definitely a solid fighter, so that should be good. And there's a few other fights announced for that card, but no one really worth notable. So definitely some good fights coming in Bellator. And like I mentioned yesterday on the podcast, it's cool that the odds makers are actually releasing the odds for the Bellator cards a little bit sooner than usual. Usually they wait till the last minute, but we do have some odds up for future Bellator cards. So I think that's all I want to talk about today. I'm just going to double check and see if I missed anything. Okay, James Gallagher, his opponent pulled out, and he'll be fighting Roman Salazar now in his next fight. That's next weekend, if I'm not mistaken. That's interesting. Roman Salazar is not too bad. I mean, he fought in the UFC for a little while. I think he fought Kid Yamamoto for 2-0 contest, if I'm not mistaken. Roman Salazar. Yes, he fought in the UFC. Yeah, he fought Kid Yamamoto to no contest. He also got submitted by Mitch Gagnon and Marlon Vera. So this guy had a rough go there. He's fought quite a few guys. He actually has a lot of experience. He has a fight against even Casey Kenney from last year, but he's coming off a loss. He's actually lost 3 of his last 4 fights. James Gallagher, of course, someone Bellator loves, 22 years old, the Strabinal. The one loss to Ricky Banderas since then looked really good, but again, he's fought low-level guys. This fight should be James Gallagher's to lose, but credit to Roman Salazar for stepping up on very short notice, heading to Ireland, taking on a guy that he's probably going to lose to, but it's his way to get into Bellator, so good for him. And I think that's all I wanted to mention. That's pretty much it. So once again, guys, thanks for joining me. I'm on Twitter at MMAOB. This podcast, as always, is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Also check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net. I have an article coming out at MMARings.net on Yair Rodriguez and how this fight against Jeremy Stephens could really catapult him towards a title shot in the wide open 145 pounds division. Also check out myself and Cole Sullivan breaking down the full UFC Mexico City card back on Tuesday. So a couple days ago, and we broke down every fight in the card. So far, no injuries. So far, no scrap fights. So all 12 fights look good to go. So definitely check that out. Guys, thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow for the Friday edition, the end of the week edition. Until then, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya.